So we are recording. It is exactly 11 o'clock in the morning here. Welcome, Making Schools Work 2022, our first time back in 3 years. Man, I'm so excited to be here. So I'm really excited to be in person because I did these presentations virtually. Oh my gosh, totally not the same. I feel like I was talking to a wall. In fact, I was talking to a wall, so that worked out. So we're here because we're here to talk about the Math Fluency project. So as you read in the description, we've been working on this project for a number of years. We're going to go over the science behind it, and we're going to talk about, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself because we haven't got to the agenda yet. But anyway, so this is 4 years later, after the pandemic, and I'm going to tell you about how Fluency has affected our students and how we really need that to tackle learning loss. So this is a presentation that really goes into the science and the research. Anybody here who has attended my other sessions before here? We got a couple repeats. All right, thanks for coming back. I know you guys suffered a lot, but thanks for coming back and suffering some more. But so this session will be not as fun as the other session, of course, but I try to make it fun. But this is going to be very good. So I'm myself here, and Mr. John Huppenthal is here as well, and we're talking about this fun thing called the Math Fluency Project. So here's our agenda, like I kind of previewed a little earlier. We're going to introduce the project. We're going to give results that we initially found in 2015 to 2017, which we were doing like very small batch testing. Then we went to larger batch testing, and then we presented it for the first time in 2018 at Making Schools Work, and then 19 again. And then the challenges we faced during the pandemic. Anybody had challenges during the pandemic? Anybody who did not have any challenges during the pandemic? Okay. Then I want to talk to you, because if you didn't have any challenges, then yes. Okay. Then we're going to talk about the science of learning, brain motivation, because a lot of the science that we're doing here can be translated into your classroom, because we basically been trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and we kind of came down to the 9 scientific principles. And we also saw a lot of phenomena, because when you get kids to do math, a lot of math, and motivate them to do it, things that have never been observed were happening. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the future of what we're doing and other possibilities that are coming down the road. So, and we're going to reserve a good amount of time because we always get a lot of questions, about 20 minutes for Q&A. So, and feel free to, if you have any questions during the session, feel free to raise your hand. I might call on you. I might just ignore you. Okay. But yeah, ask any questions, and if it's something that's coming up, I'll say, great question. You are a sage for bringing that up, and that's going to be 3 slides down. Anyway, okay. So let's start off with who's here. Okay. Any like K2 teachers here? Oh, cool. We have a couple. Awesome. We did a lot of experiments with kindergartens this year, which we hadn't really gone into before. So this is actually one of the things that we did a lot of research on, which we didn't know those kids can actually do. All right, anybody who is 3 to 5? All right, we have 4 of you, awesome. Then we have 6 to 8, okay, cool, all right, good number. Okay, now young adults, so like, high schoolers. Okay, cool. All right, anybody doing adult ed here? Okay, 1, 2, okay, great. All right, so who here is an actual math teacher? Raise your hand. All right, and I have non-math teachers in here. Great, administrators. Okay. I already asked this question earlier. 2 of you have been here before, but okay. So of those who did not raise your hand, what do you do in the classroom? Just yell it out.
Like math interventionists.
Interventionists. Okay. Interventionists. Okay. So I should have added interventionists as another one. Silly me.
CTE.
CTE, all right, Career Tech
But
Ed?
I also work with math too.
Okay, Career Tech Ed, great. All right, so anybody here heard of the Math Fluency Project before in the past? Okay, all right. So we're still relatively unknown. Great. All right. Good. So I'm going to give you a little background about myself to kind of give you a context as to why we did this project. So first off, that's me pre-pandemic. And as you know, during the pandemic, something happened. I wore a hat. No, my hair got long. I gained 20 pounds instantly overnight, and, because that's what happens when you go into lockdown. And my hair became colorful. Yeah, and actually, this is what I look like all the time. And I was like, my hair was long. I was going to cut it off and be back to normal. But I'm like, well, let me do something with it. So I tried dyeing it, and now it's an addiction. So if you want something fun to do, dye your hair. Now, I'm old, and I still am able to do it. But anyway, so I grew up in a Chinese restaurant. So you know, my parents immigrated here to the United States. Grew up in a restaurant, so I had spent a lot of time, you know, working household. I taught myself programming because I didn't like the restaurant business, which then led me into developing career into like computer-based training, distance learning technologies, and then I circled back to culinary arts education. Go figure. You know, I hated the restaurant, and then now I'm into culinary arts education because one thing I saw was, like, you know, I took my passion of computer programming and also video gaming, and then I brought it into culinary arts education. So I gave a session this morning about gamification, teaching to gamers this morning. And basically, that was my aim, was like, let's figure out how to gamify culinary arts. And we did it. It was actually successful. Then I got into mobile development, into learning management systems, created a brand new mastery system using item response theory. I say brand new, but this was brand new back in 2010. So way before everyone else is like trying to do mastery using gamification and artificial intelligence. So we were, as many people put it, way ahead of our time. The entire aim of this process was, like, you know, to take knowledge. So kids still have to learn knowledge and then put it into practice. So that's why when we created what I call the company called KP Education, you know, we want to put knowledge into practice because one cannot exist without the other. So then I met Mr. Huppenthal over here, which then we started the Math Fluency project because we built this like gamified mastery system, and he had this really crazy idea which we'll share with you. And now my latest thing is, now what happens if we take this technology and get teachers to group together and team up and create gamified curriculum collaboratively, not like TPT where you're doing it individually, but collaboratively create the best of the best. So we actually we're forming teams of teachers, so we have about 50 teachers now, we're setting up more and more. And the best part is, you'll become authors and you'll be getting paid royalties. So that's what we're doing now. So we're basically taking the technology. So that's basically my background, just to kind of give you a little sense of what I'm doing as a professional in the education space. So, and I've been doing this for 20 years. Okay, so it may not seem like it because of my hair. All right, so John, introduce yourself. Come on up. This is Mr. Huppenthal.
So,
you want to look? You got to pay attention to the slides too.
okay. So I grew up on the south side of Tucson. Got a degree in engineering from NAU. And then I got into politics, councilman, state representative, senator, and then went on to become superintendent of public instruction for all of Arizona. But I was actually born to be a scientist. When you take those little personality tests, I have the pure scientist personality. And so I love to read studies. And so 40 years ago, I began reading studies about organizational theory. And when I became involved in education, I said, wow, a classroom is an organization, but it violates all the principles of these great organizations I've been reading about. So what would happen if you redesigned a classroom with these great organizational principles? And so that began the journey that has led to where we are today. Also, along the way, became a certified math teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just talked about research. All right, great. So John has been tooling about this for a very long time. And when we got together, we took the technology components and then we started experimenting with kids on this concept. So we're going to see what it looks like. So we started our first experiment in 2016 with the inner city kid school in the south side of Phoenix, high crime, high poverty, with fourth graders, because we thought, that was a good group of kids because they had a lot of struggles at that time, and we wanted to get them young so they would have a successful career as they moved up in the school. So we started with this kid. This kid's name is Durrani. Okay, when we went to the class and we asked them what's 5 plus 4, and the answer is 9. But you guys were too quick, sorry. It's not. So this is just a result of him playing this math game for approximately 2 months. And you'll see here. Yeah, and I thought we just balanced the sound, and now the sound is. Okay, that's weird. Oh, the sound board is off. Or not off. Okay. Well, anyway, so here he is. So his challenge is he has 1 minute to answer as many math problems as he can. Okay, we got sound.
A little bit of a wake-up call. So what you can see up here is each one of these little green squares is an answer correct, and he's at a certain level in the math program, and he's doing this insanely fast. He's going to do 61 of these correct in 1 minute, and he can do them faster. I have an engineering degree and touch typist, so he's going to do them 1.5 times as fast as my best speed here. And in this particular level, X can be here, here, or here. Sometimes it's subtraction, sometimes it's addition. So they're coming at them randomly. So it just really is insane how fast and how far he came from having to do 5 plus 4 on his fingers.
So after a minute here, you'll see, and then I'll fix the audio problem.
And I waited too long to point it out, but his buddy over here was doing problems as fast as he was, but at a different level.
So this is the kind of like when we first started, we were like, okay, let's see if they like it. And then when we realized they like it, well, now they like it, they loved it. This is kind of the result we got. And
so you could see right there on the screen, he kept track that he had done 235 problems correct so far. But he had a lot of days where he did more than 3,000 math problems in a single day. His peak was 3,500.
There we go.
And more importantly, we had 4 special ed students in that class. When we started, they literally couldn't do 1 plus 1. They had problems counting. And those students, we got them to where they were doing 180 math problems in the morning, and then they would come back in the afternoon and do another 180. So clearly, the technology that we're talking about, the principles, essentially, it's the most powerful learning technology that exists today.
All right, so this is him a couple months later. Just going to show some progress.
That's the man. All right, let's get seeing our game here.
Famous.
All right, so let me zoom in here so you can see it. But you see, he's at a higher level.
Can you just stop it real quickly? So here he has 1 plus 10 equals 10 plus x. So obviously this is pretty easy. This is 1, but here we got, can you stop it again? Let it go a little further. Okay, right here. So 10 plus x equals 16 minus 5. So 16 minus 5 is 11, 10 plus 1. So he's having to solve an algebraic equation to answer those problems.
So as you can see, with video games, and I'll get into this a little bit later, we start all the kids at level 1. So he was, in the beginning, he was doing like 0 plus 1, 0 plus 2. Even though it was so beneath them, that just kind of got them into the game. And then as it kept progressing higher and higher, then they got to harder levels. Everyone was working on their own individual standard.
And you can see at that particular time, he had done 282 math problems correctly so far that day.
Yeah, and then this will be the last video we showed him, but this is really what the net result of this experiment was, is this.
Okay, go.
Okay, now it's doing sideways. Go figure. Let's rotate this sideways. Okay, there we go.
My name is Ryan. I'm fourth generation and I have 209,000 points and 17,253 questions.
Okay, let's do it.
Really confident. Nice work on problems.
You want to stop it real quick there? Chromie needs 15 screws. If Chromie has 5 screws, he needs X more. So 15 minus 5, it's 10. So he's doing fundamental. So as a fourth grader, he's doing basic algebra word problems.
Yeah, so now he's kind of saw a little demonstration of the results, and that was just phenomenal, because this is like 2015 when we first rolled out. We're like, wow, these kids are massively improving, and not only that, they're really motivated to do this. So we're going to get into what factors are causing this motivation here, but we kind of boiled it down to 9 scientific principles that we laid out. I think it started at 7, but we kept layering more and more, and went up to 9. Actually, I think because of the pandemic, we're going to be probably adding 2 more, so it'll be 11. Although I like 9 better, but it was 9/11 or 9/12, 9/13, whatever. So basically, a lot of it comes down to this. So it's all about how the kids consume entertainment. So if we think back to the old days, black and white telly. As a kid, when you were growing up, your parents were like, oh gosh, I gotta cook dinner and do all of this adult stuff, and they go, oh, this new television thing. It keeps our kids' attention. So they sit you in front of the TV as a kid, and you were watching cartoons or Sesame Street or something like that. And then you're sitting there and you're being entertained by this television. And the programming that you're seeing is these cartoon characters. So you start to form relationships with these cartoon characters, and you're starting to form this habit. And you're like, okay, cool, this is fun, this is entertaining, I really like this. And then you go to school when you grow up, and these teachers are standing in front of the classroom, they're talking at you, and they're lecturing, and you're sitting there in the nice neat rows in the classroom, and you're like going, I could do this, because when I was a kid, I sat in front of the TV, and I was being told what I need to know or what to do. So that made a lot of sense. So they were passively consuming the content and information. But then when video games came out, that completely changed the paradigm of how kids interact with content. So instead of sitting there watching the television, they're actively playing a game with these avatars, controlling them, moving around, making decisions, getting through levels, dying, restarting, trying again, trying different tactics to get through, earning points, earning badges. So now they're actively engaged with their entertainment, and they're forming these relationships with these characters. And then they grow up, they go to school, and if you're not in an active learning environment, and you're sitting there and the teacher's lecturing at you, and you're like going, where's my choice? Where's my controller? I want to make decisions. I want to learn through failure. I want to be able to do this stuff. So then when they entered into the education system, and if it wasn't designed by the way that they played video games in school, that created a huge disconnect with their learning. And because of that, they fell asleep, right? So that's the entire thing. It's like, the video games are shaping the minds of these kids and totally affecting the way they consume media. And the way that we need to address that is by basically coming to them at their level. But the thing is, we're humans, and we can't be a video game. We can't react as fast as that. But through technology, that's what we're using. We're using it to augment our abilities by creating something that uses it. And the thing about technology is it's only a tool. It's not designed to replace you. It's a tool to read them at their level. We still have to have someone at the helm controlling it. And it makes the teacher's jobs even more important than ever, because because you're controlling all these spasmodic kids. and the technology is what's going to be unifying them together. Okay, so just really quick, this is the results from our first experiment. Here, you want to explain what they're seeing here?
Yeah, and like all norm reference tests, the test that we had in Arizona had a scale, and so we went through for the class and computed their scale score gains on the norm reference test. And the norm for the entire state, we were talking about right here, so we had almost the entire class exceed the state academic gains, and we had some that did phenomenally. We had a number of students that went from below the 20th percentile to above the 20th percentile. We had one student, Derek, who scored at the 98th percentile, an African-American student who just really took this to heart. And about half the class was African-American and about half was Latino in one of the highest crime zip codes of Phoenix, in South Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
So this was really a stunning result.
And mind you, that when we came in, that the school was a totally underperforming school, and they went from I think a D to
From a D grade to a B grade.
in 1 year because of the. And you'll see that we had a few students who didn't make the mark, but these are what we call special needs kids, right? But really, as John will say, they really weren't special needs kids; they were just misunderstood.
Yeah, and even these academic gains were good gains. Because a lot of times what you'll see at this lower end, you'll actually see this tail down, and you'll see students in a typical class, you'll see a number of students that actually scored lower this year than they did last year. So for everybody to be substantially positive is quite remarkable.
Anybody have kids who have ever scored lower? Anybody? No one? Okay, cool. No one wants to admit it. Okay. All right. So we presented, the first time we presented here at Make Schools Work was in 2018 when we first introduced the project to a larger audience. And it was great because a number of guys signed on to the project. And if you're interested in learning more, or actually no, getting the video and the PowerPoint, this presentation with a lot of articles and resources, go to kp.com, and there'll be a short Google form which will say, what's your email address, what section do you want information from, and then submit it. So very simple, and I promise you I'll only email you once, unless if you reply, then I might respond. So here we go. All right, so now we're going into experience. So I kind of want to just go through a little timeline of what we've done since then. All right, so we had our alpha group in 2017. 2018 was our beta testers, which is when we brought to Making Schools Work. Actually, it was called High Schools at Work back then. Then we had, in 2019, we had dozens of test schools who were operating all around the country. And it was so exciting because they were having great results. The kids were doing great. The internal test scores were performing really well. And then we were like going, okay, this is going to be awesome. Like when these schools come out and they do their state testing at the end of the school year. And what year was that? Oh, it was 2020 state testing. We're going to get some amazing results and really show how this project has improved the schools. Of course, we got no data. Why did we get no data?
Yeah, you are
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, we've been working on this a while, and yeah, like the pandemic, it's kind of disrupted everything we were doing. Although the schools are doing great with no data, like who's going to believe us, right? Everyone's data driven. So basically, this is a testimony from an algebra teacher who had these struggling students who basically, if they ended up in his class, these are seniors, they failed all 3 previous math classes and 2 additional classes to get into his class. So great. So how much have you seen as far as their skill growth in the past couple months?
Oh my gosh, they've grown so much. They used to not be able to do -3 + 2, and now they're solving equations, finding the differences between percents, decimals, rational numbers, and whole lot of things that have just started with just adding numbers.
So what he was basically saying, and he only used it for one semester. And even though when we first started with like elementary school kids, we realized that at the high school level, what it does is it repairs all the loss that they had when they were younger. So another experiment we did with, this was Paradise Valley High School in Arizona. They were 35%. So that basically, to get to that class, they had to get 35%. It was 35% ELL. They had to get 3 Fs and lower test scores. And then when we tested them, 50 of them got A, Bs, or Cs at the end of the year. So that was a huge improvement. And they showed mastery in order of operations, adding, multiplying, subtracting, negatives, and more. So all these skills that they thought they never had were reacquired through this process. All right, and then we tried it at middle school. 6 classes, we're doing it in a 55-minute block, so they were challenged with time, because when you're in a 55-minute class, like, every second counted. So they did it as a bell work exercise, about 10 minutes, like three times a week, maybe 5 times depending on what's going on. And for those teachers, their challenge is like their students were falling behind because they were losing 50 minutes of instructional time per week. So that was the challenge that they were facing. But then they did a triple take, and then they were like, oh my gosh, this test score, even though they lost time, their test scores were 13% higher. So that's because those students were recovering learning. And then, so they did, they had, okay, sorry, I repeated that for some reason. I think I did a copy and paste by accident. And then this is another junior high school where they did this test. So this is the pre-score, post, change, and then the district average. So you can see that period 3 was the only one that came in at the average. But it was pretty dramatic. This is kind of the data we did. And they did it 3 weeks for 4 days in this test run.
So they were ecstatic because they had very difficult students who had not prospered at all, and all of a sudden, this is 42 percentile points, but it's really 500% better on these scores. So that was phenomenal, and for them to execute this in the summer school blew my socks off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so now we get to what happened during the pandemic. So we had to scale back tremendously, and you'll see why, because a lot of it depends on the students working together. So we had a handful of schools trying to do it through a Zoom method. Did not work, because this is not designed for distance learning. So
This is not a Zoom product. All of its power comes from the fact that they are together and they interact with each other. It is the pure interactions that give it its power.
Wave your hands in the air. I'm going to take a selfie. All right, great. I forgot to do that in my last session. All right, that's because I have someone else who can talk. All right, but we continued testing. So we took this as an opportunity to really dig in at the kindergarten level, first grade kindergarten. So for you guys, so John, talk briefly about what you did with those kids, those poor kids.
As we worked with that first group of 4th graders starting out, they couldn't do 5 plus 4. It just dawned on me, we've got to try this earlier. And I had a lot of people discouraging me, but we plunged in ahead and we did it with kindergarten this year. And we'll talk more about it in the context of but it was a spectacular success. Every single class period that we did it, the class got to goal and every student got to goal.
Which you'll understand why. And we also had a comprehensive high school take this on, and they did it with their entire student body, which was kind of crazy. So, and I will show you some of the results of that a little later. But this was during 2021, so this is like after lockdown, but still kind of in a difficult environment. And they used it to really tackle learning loss. So that was Keokuk High School. And they, so the results was because before we were targeting just like the interventions classes, but they did it in their comprehensive. So they did it in algebra, geometry, all the way up. And what happened was like those kids became horribly addicted to this program. They were like, you know, they went home and they were playing 2 to 3 hours a day. In fact, like we had a handful of students who were doing it during Thanksgiving and winter break. Like they were just so enamored. Like so, like instead of like pulling out their phones and playing some sort of like mobile game, they were like pulling out their phones and they're like going, I'm gonna do some math problems for 3 hours. I'm like, so that was utterly crazy. And so here you can talk a little bit more about Dobson and what you did with them. So anyway, so that high school was just utterly crazy that we saw these kids really become addicted and go home and accelerate at that level. And we'll show you what level we're at later.
So you're probably all familiar with 10 key. It's the arrangement of keys over on the right side of the computer. And so when we saw Durrani get to 61 problems a minute, the thought occurred to me when I was observing the clerks at the cash register in the grocery store. I wonder what he could do if he could do 10 key. How fast could he go? Could he get to 100? Because we took slow motion video of him, and you couldn't be moving your fingers faster than he moved his fingers, and he was using the keys up here. And so the idea was to teach kindergartners 10 key. So I got halfway through the year and I gave up all hope of teaching kindergartners 10 key. And then, so I quit and I thought about it for a couple of weeks, thought about what I had seen, and I started over again. And so we got most of the kids learning 10 key. So you can do it. So we figured out how to teach them, but it took us a whole year. The other thing is we spent a year in 2nd grade, and we had learned all this stuff, but we were more ignorant than we realized. I thought you could just load this on. And so we did it 5 days a week. You know, we had very high objectives for the students, and guess what? They got sick of it. And so we realized that you have to allow the rose to blossom at its own speed. So when I went to kindergarten, they were doing it just 1 day a week. And so we get to the last day of school, and I'm coming there and I'm thinking, I'm going to be an ogre if I have them do 100 math problems each on the last day of school. And so I told them, look, we can just play today, and we're going to vote, and it can't be 50%. It's got to be at least 70% to do the math. And so I said, who wants to do the math? Everybody raise your hand. Boom, 100%. So I'm going like, wow, okay. We can do more than 1 day a week. So this coming year, I'm moving down to preschool, and I'm moving with my kindergartners up to 1st grade, and we're going to move to 2 days a week. So I'm confident now that they can do it, and we're going to crank the objectives up just a little bit. And because it was obvious that all these students were highly motivated. Now I used one other technique this year. I bought a guitar. And I told them that if every student made it to their objective, we would raffle off the guitar. And a student could take the guitar home for a week. Now I don't know how to play the guitar, and they certainly didn't. But what I tell you, they sure wanted to take that guitar home. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to end up buying 5 or 6 guitars this year, because the guitar won't come back. Well, I still have the guitar a year later, and it's not broken. It's in brand new condition. I don't know what they did with that guitar when they got home, but they sure wanted to win that guitar. But it also created some kind of fixture to acknowledge that the class had done every student had made it to goal, and so the raffling off of the guitar was sort of like a symbolic event. But it was key. It was a key part of the whole thing. So every student got to, and we had 5 students. So think of this math problem: 30 plus x equals 50. So we had 5 kindergarten students doing 20 or more of those problems in a 1-minute game. So that, I didn't get to problems like that until I was in high school, and I have an engineering degree. So it was quite remarkable. We are really dealing with all the things that we have wrapped into this, the most powerful learning technology that exists.
So let's get into actually showing them what it is, because I'm sure you guys are like, what is it? What is it? Oh, so you know, because of that, like, you know, this is the again. So do you guys want to go home? No. You want to keep playing?
Yeah! I never liked that, but they made it to a video game.
Yeah. So you know, so like when I spoke on gamification, and I'm actually doing a session again tomorrow, a 2-hour version of it. So if you want, it's a workshop, so you get a lot of value out of it. So if you apply gamification properly, you don't have to make a video game, but it feels like a video game. And to these kids, it's all those psychological cues. So it doesn't have to have glitzy graphics, you know, fancy sounds or avatars or anything like that. It has to they're being programmed by the video game industry to see certain triggers, and we're using these triggers in the math game subtly, but it's hitting them at the right points. And these kids are like, this is a video game. Does it look like Minecraft? No. but it feels like it. So okay, how does it all work? Okay, let's go into science. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a beacon of learning that really comes back down to, like, you know, our ancient ancestors on the plains of Serengeti, when we were basically hunters and gatherers. So, you know, when we were alone, we would starve and die. So when we were together as a society, we feasted together. And cooperation.
That's the critical piece here, is the team objective, and the big blue bar that lets them know that they're together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just cognitively healthy for them to learn, it's psychologically healthy for them to be a team that achieves something. And there's a palpable sense of joy that they have when they get to that blue bar, when it goes, when it
we'll
flashes
see that blue
blue.
bar here once we get to it. But it's baked into our DNA. So it's all about group accountability, which really isn't seen a whole lot in education. And when we created this is what the students see on the screen. We see total points. They see their goal. So this is the class goal that John was talking about, where, you know, our goal is 20,000 points. And as the students are answering those math problems that you saw earlier, they're contributing points to the goal. And we also have their competition against other classes, so they're kind of competing against their classes as well. We see our badge, we start progress to the epic goal. So all these, like, triggers are programmed in their head, so when they see this, they're like, video game, even though it's not a video game, but it's triggering them in that sense, and they're keying on it. And the epic goal is also the most important, because that's when the class hits that goal, like 2 million points, then you get a pizza party, ice cream party. Well, like what John did was, like, you know, he did this weekly goal where you got the guitar. So all these goals are very important to the student. In fact, so this is what one of the students at the Keokuk High School, he made it all the way up to 99. And we were anticipating that no students could make it to that level in less than a year. And this student did it in like about 5 months, because they started late, and then lots of breaks. Anyway, but yeah, pandemic, lots of breaks. But he went home and did it. Level 99 is not very easy. It's like it's a long division level, and there's over 130 levels in our program that the kids go through. So given the interest of time, well, I'm not going to show this video, but these are kids saying they want to do it at home. We saw intense motivation from ELL special needs and refugee students during our early experiments. So this is a teacher.
All right, my name is Aaron Armas. I teach 5th grade at a school here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's called Sonoran Science Academy. We have a unique population here. We have a large refugee population from East Africa. We also have students from Iraq, Syria, Turkey, as well as from here in the state of Arizona and down south from Mexico. And on the first day that my students experienced it, you know, their excitement, you can say, was through the roof. They had all kinds of success. You know, they were solving problem after problem. They were seeing their points grow. They were watching the leaderboard, you know, and seeing their positions change throughout that day.
Yeah, so when I send you the PowerPoint, you can watch the whole video. But really, you know, it shows that, like, you know, individual accountability is also important, because these kids are seeing where they're at, they're seeing their position, but they're also seeing their goals move into account. So this is the most important screen that a teacher that we have on the screen. So this is actually projected on in front of the class. A leaderboard. And no, we know in education leaderboards is a taboo thing, but when you use leaderboards correctly, it becomes a very positive effect. So we see, like, you know, these students, and these numbers actually aren't shown to the students, but we see that, you know, if you can read all the way to the back, that's 1,600 points, and this is 400 points, and this is 200 points. So the students are given goals based on their abilities. So we calculate their goals based on their past performances, and we say you can do 400 points today. And then when they're playing the game, they're doing the points, and it's going across the screen. Now, as a teacher, you're looking at the class, and everyone started at the same pace. And if you're a coach at, like, training marathon runners, and you know how everyone runs, but what if one of your runners is running slower than this student, then you go, okay, there's something wrong. This is what we call real-time RTI. So you can actually response to intervention right there and go to that student and find out what's going on, why are you having errors. That's because that student leveled up to a new level. It's a concept that they had problems with before, and then you can actually help that student overcome that hurdle in real-time responses. Because these kids are so impatient, they don't want to wait for you to run a report and come up with an IEP, get a specialist in. By then, it's come and gone, and they don't care anymore. So this allows you to create that intervention. And the best part is, like, you know, when the class gets the goal, and we try to get everyone else the goal, and that's why this is not a babysitter. This is something that you want to be actively involved in and encourage these kids who are running slower to run faster or run at their ability.
The bars are absolutely critical, because what the research shows is that 10% of all students skate through a whole school year without doing a single math problem. They don't do their homework, and they look busy in class, and it just doesn't happen. But this is a critical part for thinking about this classroom is culturally different, and you have to really think it through. Because as a teacher, the critical part is, what I found out in kindergarten, is that every time it started, there would be 2 blank bars. And I would have to say, Mateo, we got to get started, we got to get going. And you would find 2 students who, for whatever reason, they had a difficult night last night. You have to go over there, you have to encourage them, you have to say, hey, we have an expectation here of you getting moving. But the whole thing, it's like a garden, you have to tend to it. And it's a critical part of it. It's different than a normal classroom, and what we're observing is that it's perhaps not for every teacher. Because some teachers, it doesn't work. You have to be comfortable moving around the classroom and tending it to. So I would always have an eye, look at the board, see the shortest bar, move to that student, see if there's something about the problem types, I can help them a little bit, that type of thing. But in order for it to work, I had to be continuously moving around the students and helping and encouraging them.
So you know, when we went to the high school level, this is like probably the most critical thing which I think.
I actually found out that it kind of tripped up my basic math skills, and I was like missing on kind of some stuff that I should already know.
Improve my basic math skills in multiple ways by reassuring me that I can do it and giving me the confidence that I can do it, and just giving the touch up and the brushes on the basic level stuff that I missed when I wasn't paying attention.
Whoa, revelation there. Anyway, so the whole entire process is, like, since we're starting at level 1, we're having them climb this ladder. And these kids don't realize it. They're at high school, they're a sophomore, junior, senior, and they're trying to learn their grade level concepts. And they're having all these problems. And that's because down the ladder, they're missing so many rungs. And no one's going to take the time to go figure out what they're missing. Humanly, we don't have time unless if you have like a person who's with the student all the time. We don't have those resources. So when they're going through this game, they're starting out with 1 + 1. Okay, I could do that. Then they get to harder stuff. And they're climbing this ladder. And they get to level 10, they get to level 20, and then they get to level 25, 26, and then 27, they go, oh, I don't understand these questions. And then what happens is they start working that question, remediating that content over and over again until they start building a habit, and then they build fluency on it, and they repair that rung. And they repair that rung, what happens? That rung is actually foundational to multiple rungs up the ladder. Then this ladder goes from rickety to more sturdy, and then they go, oh, I can understand that 9th grade concept now because this thing was blocking me the entire time. And as they continue their way trek up, then they start building confidence and they don't feel like they're dumb, which is probably the most important thing about this. Because what we're doing is like, with fluency, we're creating automaticity. So right now, those brains, the brain that these students are doing these math problems, they're going to cognitive overload because they're missing so many rungs that they're having to spend all their energy balancing themselves, trying to figure out this problem, missing all these components. But then once we built that ladder back up again, then we get into fluency, then they're not spending any brain power. They're able to work on higher level math and so many other things because they don't have to think about the math anymore. And that's why fluency is important. I know everyone's pushing away from fluency, but you need that to be able to process a lot more. We don't want to be all dependent on calculators to do basic math and arithmetic. So, repair, extend, and actually, you had a lot of experience with students having math PTSD too, right, John?
Yeah, they I think of Jalissa when I started working with her. She couldn't do 1 + 1, and so we had to start with literally number identification, counting, and she worked on up to where she was doing her 120 problems a day. They were very simple problems, but I thought it was fascinating when she came back the first day the next year and she sat down and she started doing the program, and she came up to me and she literally had tears in her eyes and she said, Mr. H, all the speed is still there. So she had no summer loss. And in that same class period, Durrani and Emmanuel and Jamarian sat down, and for 20 straight minutes, they did 50 math problems correct for 20 straight minutes. Each of them did 1,000 math problems. This was after the summer. So what it shows is you're burning in deep memories and skills that don't fade away easily over the summer. They were all there day one.
And these were kids, when they first started, we asked them to answer very basic math problems, and they were just sitting, hovering over the keyboard, and they were afraid to answer it because they had the fear of God burned into them that if you get it wrong, then you're a failure. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them to succeed in the success zone, which is a very strong and very important scientific principle. Because what it is a study by Terry Scott. And he says like students need to have 3 successes for every 1 failure. But in real life, they're getting like so many failures that they're just drowning in failure. But we're actually programmed the computer to keep them at a level so they have 9 to 1. So they're always doing something that they know and reinforcing that as they go up the levels. Because what it is like, we're turning them from drowning to surfing. So now they're not treading water, but now they're on top of the wave and they're learning from that. This is just a video of the teacher saying that her students felt they were stupid, not anymore, but I want to have some time for Q&A. But basically, how we do that using that science is, let's say you're at level 27, 50% of the primary item bank is the core of those questions. So when you're seeing those questions that Durrani was doing earlier, 50% were from the level you're currently actively working. So that keeps them in the success zone because we're working on that. 20%, what we call forward pressure, is coming from levels that they've already achieved. So we're throwing in the questions that they've already mastered, and then we have 30% back pressure, which is questions coming at them, pushing them back. So they're being introduced to the next concept very slowly as through the process. So this scaffolding allows them to work in the level that they're most comfortable with while starting to build them up. So it's like anything, like if you go and hike Mount Everest tomorrow, you're probably not going to succeed. So we got to start working our way up. And that's how we keep them in the success zone. And basically that creates the beacon of learning, which really gives them the signal of success. And it's all about the signals, like where I was saying earlier, like the gamification signals, they're keying in on that. So this is a contrast between affluent kids, because we see that affluent kids are usually very successful. That's because they have positive signals, creating permanent learning. They come from parents, peers, and community, but when we deal with the real world, a lot of these kids don't have this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to mimic those signals in the game itself while they're playing in the classroom with their peers. So their peers are becoming a larger beacon in their peers are becoming their community, and hopefully their parents will be supportive of that. Yes, you had a question?
Can you clarify what a positive signal is? I don't understand
So,
that.
you were born in
Taiwan.
and he can't spell. He meant signals, positive signals.
Yes.
So,
Signals, yeah. My bad.
I apologize for that.
It's like
but-
positive feedback?
Yes.
Yeah. So in other words, what we're basically showing here is that the deck is stacked against at-risk kids.
Oh, yeah.
They're not. So what we've done is created this environment that sort of replicates the signals to their brains that the affluent kids are getting from home. So you can call these signals or whatever, telling the brain, learn this, learn this. So essentially what we're showing is that at-risk kids, really the signals that come at them is this information is irrelevant. You don't have to learn it, forget it. And that's actually what your brain spends most of its time doing, is forgetting. And it needs a very positive, specific signal to tell it to learn. And so what we have with this environment is this overwhelming dose of positive signals that say, learn this, it's important for your group identity, it's important for your status within the group. And these are very powerful signals for the brain to form memory and to develop skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and can I explain it better? Actually, I can't. It's his science. So basically, so throughout the process, we saw that these students we didn't give them any instruction. They were actually building their own algorithms to get through these levels. Just like when you're playing a video game, you're not told how to get through the level. So they're actually building these. The biggest question we get from the teachers, like, what are you teaching them for that level? We're like, well, we're not teaching them anything. They're figuring it out on their own. And the next level the level that they master will reinforce the level coming up next. So they're building their own paths to success in that. And a lot of remember when that one teacher told us that how the student was deconstructing problems that she never taught the student? That was Miss Green. Oh no, yeah. So what was she talking about there?
Essentially, this is what you want to do. It's sort of like a student who's using a rope to climb a mountain, and then they get to the end of the rope, and then they just keep right on going on their own. They're figuring stuff out and moving ahead, learning stuff that you haven't even taught them. In other words, they have an internal, intrinsic desire to learn, and that's the ultimate expression of the proper thing that you want students to become lifelong learners, and for them to study essentially every night, to be reading and thinking and to be and so that's the ultimate symbol of success when students are trying to learn math that you haven't even set up as an assignment.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to this, but when we create this project, we're looking for people. We have grants and opportunities to get more schools involved and to we want to try to rebuild that data loss that we had earlier. So we're looking for more partners to come up. But this kind of goes into the future. We're actually looking into Alzheimer's research now. We're working with this group, Home, which is looking to utilize this for Alzheimer's. And then we've also learned that recursive loops are not bad either, which is basically saying, you know, you take them up to a certain level. So the students get all the way up to level 40, and then we drop them back to level 1 and have them go back up to level 40 again. And what happens is students who took 4 months to get to level 30 only took 3 weeks to get up to level 30. So they could see a vast level of improvement as they're moving up. And then in 4 months they get up to level 45. So then they go back down, back up again, and they go faster and higher throughout the process. So if you want to join the project, so just you've had the form. We're going to send you an email when you put your email address in and say I'm interested in joining a forum. We're looking for data that we lost in 2020, and to bring it back again. We want to help kids get out from learning loss, and really just to try to bring this project to life, because there's so much potential that we have here, and we definitely thank you for coming and seeing our presentation on this. So you can sign up again at kpkp.com to get this video, and if you want to participate in our ongoing project for this next year, you know, please write a comment on there that you want to, and we will get you set up. And it's so easy to do it because the way that we have it set up is you have your students go in, you hit start, and the kids just get going. You don't have to do anything else really other than monitor your kids and get them going. You know, we have a 2-sheet startup guide instruction, and that's it. Two pages, that's it. It's not complicated, it just goes. So, all right, so questions. Sorry, I said 20 minutes. We went a little long because it's been 3 years since we last talked to a group of people. Sorry. Yes.
I'm just curious, so is this a program that you're looking for school systems to buy into eventually?
Well, the eventuality is like, yeah, to turn it into a commercial product just like everything else that schools can purchase and use, or we can find a foundation to subsidize it. So there's a variety of ways that we could approach it. Like if we could get like, you know, the Melinda Gates Foundation to pay for it, then great, and they could give it out to everybody. But we want to make it available to as many people as we can through any means necessary. So whether it be selling it through grants, through foundations, through opportunities like that. I mean, you know, we just want to get it out there. Great question. Hey, yourself.
This one's more for John. You mentioned once a day. You found out in kindergarten once a day was about good, and then as you go up to
once a week.
Once a week. I'm sorry, once a week, right? And you said 5 to 10 minutes a day. How long? How many? What's the? I guess I'm looking for the time.
Okay, so this is really important. So I found that in the beginning, it would take me about an hour to deal with user IDs, passwords, getting them started, making it around. And then at about a month, 5 weeks, that came down to less than 25 minutes.
Okay.
And so I could go in there. That's all. This is all I did with the class. I would come in and do the math project. So I could come in and leave 25 minutes later, and they would have done the whole project. But that first part is critical because they're doing two things. You're creating and establishing the culture that we're going to get every child to blue, to objective every day. I can't overemphasize that enough, is that you establish that as an absolute norm.
What would you I guess advise or what's your middle school?
So under normal circumstances, you used to talk about like, you know, getting these kindergartners acclimated to technology.
Correct.
So that's a whole different
right. That's a totally different thing. So
I
guess my ultimate question is.
But for middle school,
yeah.
So
what would
say,
be a recommendation to use this for like middle school?
10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, bell work exercise. It could be shorter, it could be longer, depending on the environment. If you're in a 40-minute class, you do 5
minutes. Now, would you say 10 to 15 a day, or would you try to start maybe 2 to 3 times a week?
2 to 3 times a week, yeah.
Okay.
And then you basically give them the desire to say, hey, do you want to do the math game? And everyone's like, yeah, I want to do the math game. But if you do it 5 days a week, every single week, then they'd be like, oh, too
I
much.
would still tune it in setting your objectives. Absolutely, you need to have a norm that we'd be glad to work with you, but you need to have a norm that everybody will get to their objective every day. That's critical, and that may take a bit longer than the 10 to 15 minutes, but it's a heck of a lot more important that you do that. That establishes, sort of brings everything together,
Yeah.
that norm.
But we have settings in the program that you can say, I only have 10 minutes to do this, then we'll try to set the objectives properly.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of, how do we realistically implement,
Yeah.
if this is something that we want to do.
Yeah, in intervention class,
Timelines.
in this class, then it's very applicable, but like when we did this in the comprehensive high school, they were like doing it like 2 to 3 times a week for about 10 to 15 minutes as part of an exercise, and they made it part of their grade. So, and so there's also those incentives as well. But you want to get them going and then excited, and then conclude it, and then move on to to your lesson. Very good. Your question here, sir.
Yeah, you have the different students at the varying different degrees. The program itself sets up the goals for them.
Yes.
In other words, it automatically, and I know as they go, as they do things faster, they get the higher and more difficult things.
Yeah.
But, so in other words, you're saying we're going to set a goal that everyone can hit 25 questions a day or something like that, if it's that low. But everybody has to be able to hit that and have success.
Yeah, you control the class goal, so you can tune that down to a lower level. There are certain levels you can't go below, but you can tune it down.
He's speaking about individual goals, and the system will actually, because it takes it to their past performance. Say today we feel like you're going to be able to do 50 questions, 100 points, or something like that. And then tomorrow it might be higher, and the next day it might be lower. So it basically takes into account their performance, and it tries to guess and try to
automatically adjusts.
It automatically does it. You don't have to do it. And that's basically your question.
Yeah.
It's like the system will figure it out, and then it'll give the goal. It uses AI for that.
And then competition between classes.
Yes.
Is put into that leaderboard then so they can see it all.
Yes, and that's actually done through a normalization process. So we look at the other classes and how they perform, and then we just basically, when they're playing the game, we're simulating what the other class would be doing as well. Because you can't do it live, obviously. But,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But
But I mean, it's hey, look, they're doing better. We got to hurry and do better.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's where the weekend stuff and the holiday stuff come in. I want to get. We want to be better than the other team, so.
Yeah, and that's a whole entire another motivator factor as well. Yeah, absolutely. That drives them crazy sometimes. Like, great question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to think of credit recovery class. You have students in possibly 15 hours a week. Credit recovery for, say, they fail 3 math classes. How will this system help to get them to the level that they graduate?
Well, we work with GED programs, so it'd be kind of like similar to that. But basically, the entire emphasis of this program is you with the credit recovery, you can have students that come in at different times, but you want to get them together as a group and say, this is our objective for today. So you might have students come in and out, but you basically sign them in. The system will analyze what past performance they have, and then it'll say, okay, now this is the objective. But the key is they can't do it by themselves. We need that group dynamic for it to really gel. Otherwise, it's just like another flashcard game, and we don't want that.
I noticed, John, you mentioned that it was successful in a summer school. I believe I heard you say that. Well, the summer school is kind of set up, you've got students who are credit recovery in a sense. Instead of being a whole year going back to school, take that math course, or trying to recover that credit during summer school, they're trying to learn those math concepts in that short amount of time, 5 weeks. So can this system work, let's say, for 9th graders repeating math in the summer?
Well, yeah, I'm literally today, my kindergarten class And in the summer, turned out not to be a kindergarten class, it turned out to be a preschool through second grade class, so it's a group of so I have a class running back in Chandler, Arizona right now today. And so it's a mix. But we ran this at a junior high, and they were very pleased with it. Students, and you know, it's basically as fast as a student can move up that ladder, they will move on up and polish their skills.
So based on the pre-test.
So the thing is, we don't have a pre-test. So the key is we start them all at level 1,
Okay.
and they move up as fast as they can until they hit the standards that they're missing. So it's a journey. So we don't test them to a
Ninth grade, maybe 45, or for sixth grade, maybe
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, so like, you know, so a 9th grader might make it to level 20 in 2 sessions, where a 6th grader might make it to level 20 in 5 sessions. And they all work on their respective levels.
It's very easy, they just progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if they already have background knowledge and they already have fluency, so they because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create fluency through automaticity. And some students may know the stuff, but they're not fast. So we're trying to get them to do things fast, so that we're creating automaticity.
Okay, so it costs, what are you looking at as licensing?
Well, eventually we're trying to get it down to like $10 a student a year, so not a whole lot. But you know, we're finding grants, we're finding other means to be able to support this. And
did a teacher get this for their classroom, or administrator get this for their school out of their own local fund?
oh yeah.
$10 a student, that's not very much.
Yeah, if they have it, they can. I mean, our challenge is like, you know, we don't have the research data, we don't have the established history. There's so many other math companies out there that's like, you know, they're gobbling up all the dollars. So we're just like, well, you know, but if it's available, then we could use the support. Yeah. So you had a question.
Yeah, I teach Algebra 1, so I teach high schoolers, and everything I have to on campus, and then I do a lot of edge elastic stuff. Do you guys know that? Because it goes along with our state test in Ohio. My thing is, I set up where my kids do things like weekly, like they have so many things they have to do per week. Could that also go into this? Because a lot of my kids have extra time in, like they get the stuff done that I need them to do, but I throw this into.
Well, that would actually be out of the bounds of what we normally do, but that would be a really amazing experiment to see if it works. So I'd be curious to see if that would work, because we've been focusing on the group dynamic thing, but if you're doing it as an objective-based learning tool and say, hey, do this and get to level something by the end of this week,
right?
That's a out of the box thinking.
Are you talking about like MasterPath, like putting in a MasterPath or
Yeah.
Master Connect or something?
Yeah,
like I use Canvas too.
They have so much to do in a week. Like
Yeah.
I can, yeah. And if I would say you have to get to level whatever by the end of the week.
We could try that. I mean, we don't know the results of it, but I mean, I'd be fascinated to see what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I see. We just, like you said, we just purchased IXL for the whole district, right?
Yeah, IXL, yep.
But and I told you my wife works for IXL, so. But I'm thinking this is like really good for what the interventionists. You know, I can see how it catches up more. I see how it's more teaches. So like, I think the difference, like what I tell with IXL is like, you have to be more of a teacher. You have to be more, there's more intervention. When the intervention comes, you actually have to teach the concept, as opposed to what I'm doing in this program is it kind of, like a video game teaches you the concept within a video game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like the gamification, I think, is what I'm trying to make the connection here, is that, think about this program's a lot like a video game. You know, whether you're 6 or you're 18, you're putting it in and you're starting at level 1. And if you may play the prior version of the game, then yeah, you'll get through it quicker, earlier, but like if you're, you know, if you're brand new, it might take you a little bit to get to it, but it doesn't mean that, you know, ultimately you could build steep.
Yeah.
This way, if I'm not getting it right?
That is exactly, I couldn't have said it, put it in better words, so.
And I found in my class anyways, we play a lot of hoop too.
Yeah.
I don't even like really lecture anymore.
Yeah.
We just play games the whole time. And that, they're like, end of course exam scores in Ohio, like we were really low. And this year we only had 3 kids that
Awesome.
didn't meet like competency in Ohio,
Yeah.
so have to retake it. And just, you're right, with them playing games, they don't even realize they're.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
So
game-based.
That's why I asked you that question.
Yeah.
The only thing I find is sometimes you can overdo it, and then they don't want to get burned out. And that's,
Yeah.
I guess that was my main question.
That's the balancing act.
Right.
Yeah. And that's actually, as a teacher, you have to keep a pulse on your class. You go, okay, next
You're
week
right,
we're
you're
going
right.
to take a break on it.
Because I have a building game that teaches them how to build a game.
Mhm.
That's not what it's called, but it's known as the building game.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the building game? Some classes are like, we just want to play it every day. Some classes are like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, so that's
Yeah.
where I'm trying to make sure. But that's more of an experimental. This is more of like a life skill. Like math is. I'm not saying everyone is, but like not everyone's going to go into construction.
Yeah.
Right. This is baseline skills.
Yeah,
Math,
totally.
reading.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a little different. You know, that's why you don't want them burned out.